Welcome to the State of Mind Virtual Speaker Series. This series has been developed to provide education and support to youth, caregivers, and educators during this challenging time. This series is a collaboration between two local nonprofits, 1 in 5 and MindPeace, and various community mental health partners. We're glad you're here to educate yourself and to learn how to keep your brain in a healthy state of mind.
All right, we are live on Facebook now. I am Nancy Eigelmiller, the Executive Director of 1 in 5, and I am very happy to introduce you to Dr. Ann-Louise Lockhart, who is a pediatric psychologist and a parent coach and is the owner of the New Day Pediatric Psychology in San Antonio, Texas. And today she is going to be talking about mental wellness routines during an uncertain time. So Dr. Lockhart, I will let you take it away.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you for having me here, everyone. So we're going to talk about a topic that I've been talking about a lot because this is something that concerns tons of people because we are, there we go, because this is a very uncertain time. And I think why this is so important for so many of us is because we keep thinking things are going to end and they don't seem to be doing that. So let's, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna spend the first 40 minutes or so talking about everything on my slides, giving some more details about each of those things, and then we'll save the last 10 or 15 minutes for your questions. So feel free to put those in the box, hold on to them, put them in the box, and then we'll address those as well. All right, so these are the questions that we wanna consider is why is this current period so impactful to our mental health? What data surrounds the impact on mental health of all these different things and kind of looking at the stats around that? What can you do about this in your daily routine? When should you seek help? And then how you can help your kids and teens during this time. Okay, so let me put this here. All right, so the challenge of the now. Why is this current period so impactful to our mental health? So one of the things that I do is I'm a pediatric psychologist, which means I work with kids of everywhere from age 2 all the way up through adulthood, actually, and also parent coaching. So a parent coach is someone who helps parents with their challenges of their children, no matter what their age, whether it's academic, medical concerns, whether it's behavioral concerns, just even understanding their parenting journey with their child. So it's just basically coaching you through your challenges. So why that is important, and when we look at this, is that one of the reasons why this period is so challenging and it impacts our mental health is because of the monotony. Monotony is the same thing every single day. Now, in the beginning of the pandemic, when there was a lot of quarantining going on, then a lot of people did feel that way. It felt like there was no change in the routine. There was a getting up, getting on the road, taking your kids to school, getting to work. There was something that was, there was variety in your schedule. And that really has decreased with being held up in your home. And then even with this hybrid learning, online schooling, back to school, there's still somewhat of a monotony, although that's actually changing now most recently in the past couple weeks. The other part is there's no break. So we are constantly being bombarded by information, by resources. The number of accounts on Instagram and Facebook have just significantly grown. All the information you're getting online on YouTube, there are constant things that are bombarding your information in your head. And so this constant inflow of information is challenging because we are always on, we're always reading, we're always getting more information. And the times that we would normally take a break. So if you're a stay-at-home mom and then your kids go off to daycare or school, then you got a break. Or if you worked away from home, then the kids went to school, you went to work and you got a break. Or your spouse, your partner did traveled or went to work, you got a break. Like there was constantly those things, and that's not happening. And so being isolated, wearing a mask, social distancing, any of those things that is happening, that you're feeling like you're constantly getting information all the time. Another thing is your routines are disrupted. And, like I mentioned earlier, that when your routines are disrupted because of lack of physical activity, lack of mental activity, it can be exhausting. I remember I'm in San Antonio, and when we got the lift in being able to get out and go out, and my family and I decided, oh, let's go to a park. And it's been weeks since we've actually really been out and outside. And I got there and I could barely get down the stairs. I was huffing and puffing. I got a horrible migraine headache. I was like done. And it was like, we were there like an hour and a half. And so just even trying to get out and get going and changing up your routine can feel like a burden. Also, there's no set schedule. So we're basically, many people are winging it. When people ask me, well, what should I do with my kid? And what kind of schedule should I have? And, you know, what kinds of requirements and, you know, boundaries. You know, the thing is, even as professionals, we are kind of making stuff up, honestly. We're using what the research has shown us. We're using what parenting and child development research has told us, and we're kind of extrapolating. We're taking from that and figuring out, well, if this is what we know about the brain, and this is what we know about child development, and this is what we know about effective parenting, let's just say this, let's just do that. So this no set schedule, it's good to have a schedule, it's good to have a routine, but it's still, things keep changing all the time. My kids are in 3rd and 5th grade, and we're doing online schooling at home. And, you know, we're just kind of making it up. So we figure, okay, one day this works really well, and maybe another day doesn't work as well. Maybe one day we work half day, another day we're working most of the day because the curriculum or the particular subjects are harder. So we really have to go with what we're feeling that day, as well as what we think we're going to be most beneficial for us and for our kids. The other part is that things remain uncertain. Is that, you know, back in March, we thought, oh, okay, by April, things will be fine. By May, okay, definitely by June. Oh, definitely by July. Okay, maybe August. Okay, now September. For many places, I've spoken to people who typically have worked outside the home, and many of them aren't even, especially in certain parts of the country, many of them are not going back to work until February or March of next year. So, you know, again, that's going to be like a whole year that life has been disrupted. So things remain uncertain. And so it's really hard to know what to expect and when things are going to go back to normal. And what I've told people is that I think we need to get out of the idea that things are going to go back to normal. There is no going back. We have to move forward. And that's a big part of the challenge, that people often get stuck in how things are supposed to be, how it's not fair. And, you know, the thing is, we need to be able to let that go, mourn the loss in the life that we had, and move forward and create a new life for ourselves, a new routine for ourselves. The other part too is that things seem surreal. I know that in the beginning, one of the things that my husband and I love are sci-fi disaster movies. Like, the more disaster, the better. You know, movies with pandemics and disease and natural disasters. Like, we love that stuff. And but I don't want to live it. So when this stuff started happening, I was like, wow, this is just so weird. It's just so surreal when your brain is trying to make sense of what you're seeing. And it doesn't know what's happening. It doesn't know how to make sense of it. And our brain tries to keep us safe. It tries to keep us secure. And when it's seeing something that's out of the normal, that we don't have a schema for, we don't have a file system for, we get uncomfortable. We get anxious. We get depressed. We have panic attacks. We have physical symptoms like headaches, stomach aches, back aches, muscle aches. Those kinds of things. Our immune system is like fighting back. And then the last thing is that we're unsure of the ending. And so it's kind of like with the things remain uncertain, things are surreal, but we're really unsure of the ending. Like, we're unsure of, when is it going to end? When can we do things that are typical for our everyday life? And so when we don't know how it's going to end, and the ending keeps getting pushed, those all impact our mental health, because we can't just like and take a breath and move forward. So then let's discuss kind of some child and adolescent development, because this is going to be important too, since many of you are, you know, handling, how are your kids dealing with this? What are they doing to be able to get past a lot of this stuff? So with child development, we're really talking about the time period between conception until 26 years of age. That is child and adolescent development. So when I say I'm a pediatric psychologist, I'm literally treating all of that age group, okay? And change is happening in a pretty orderly pattern There may be some delays, stops and starts, some lagging, some things that get disrupted in development, but typically that's where the child development period is happening. And so when we're looking at these time periods, all of these ages can be impacted based on what is supposed to be happening, okay? So mental health in the United States, why I love 1 in 5 and what they're doing is because they're literally talking about how 1 in 5 children are experiencing a mental disorder in a given year. 13 to 20% of kids in the US are dealing with this mental health disorder. And so it's important for us to be educated and to be able to understand how things like disruption of the norm impact our children, and especially those who already have a mental health disorder. And then on top of that, if they are developing it, if they're behaving in a way and developing in a way that's out of the ordinary for them. So in data from the CDC, Center for Disease Control, kids between ages 3 and 17, the highest percentage of diagnosis are ADHD. Then we have behavioral or conduct problems like oppositional behaviors and severe tantrums, then anxiety, then depression, then autism, spectrum disorders, and then Tourette's. So when we're looking at that, these are the most common, and 1 in 5 children in the US are experiencing that. So these are important to pay attention to, because although ADHD and behavioral problems look very externalized and they're very much there in your face, you see them, anxiety and depression can be more subtle and very low key. And we have seen an exponential explosion of anxiety, especially more so than depression, especially during this pandemic with adults and with children. And so we want to be paying attention to that, because for a lot of teens and children, many of them don't pull in when those diagnoses are happening, they push it out. So you're going to see them coming out as tantrums, as sleep dysregulation, as addictions to screens, as refusal to eat, running away from you, being defiant. So it looks like it's a behavioral or conduct issue. It looks like they're being bad or spoiled or bratty. It looks like all of these negative words that we use for these kids, when in fact it could be anxiety or depression pushed out. So that's when, if it's something where your child is doing something that looks beyond what is typical for them, it's really important to at least consult with a mental health professional so that you can see what is the next step for your child. For the 12 to 17-year-olds, 6.8% of them have ADHD. Illicit drug use disorder, alcohol use disorder, and cigarette dependence are some of the other ones that are also big challenges for this age group. Suicide, since we're in Suicide Prevention Month and Suicide Awareness Month in September, suicide is the second leading cause of death among adolescents. Motor vehicle accidents are typically in the first leading cause. And so it's really important to pay attention to that. For children, the leading causes of death are drownings and cancers. So it's just to be aware of those things, to be aware of those events and the impact on children and adolescents is super, super important, because as we are dealing with things, as we're suffering with things, they are too. And so we need to make sure that we're giving them the right message and the right supports. So the other thing about why this time period is so a big deal for us is that we don't know, okay, what's the long-term impact? How is all of this going to really impact us? And so what we do know is that with the parents' mental health, is your mental health, it can be a risk or protective factor for your kids, which means if you're struggling a lot and you're not dealing with the things you're struggling with, that's going to impact your kids. They're going to observe that, they're going to see that, and they're going to learn how to deal with the world and themselves based on how you're dealing with things. And that's where mirroring comes in, which means that our brain picks up on and reflects the people who are around us. So if you as a parent are struggling with anxiety and you are very obsessive and very compulsive and you're dealing with some OCD symptoms because of the pandemic, but it's beyond what is typical, whatever typical means right now, but it's causing an impairment and a disruption in your functioning, then what's going to happen is your child is going to pick up on that too. Because if mom or dad, grandma, auntie, if they're freaking out about this, then I must be I should be freaking out about this as well too. So our kids reflect off of what we do. And so it's really important. Doesn't mean you have to be a super person. Doesn't mean that you have to be like strong all the time, but it does mean you have to be aware of it, and you have to provide a safe space for them to be able to talk about what they're struggling with, so that if they're going through these things, you can let them know that you are too, and how you can support them through that. Also, this new territory, as I mentioned before, we don't know what we're dealing with. Like, this is something that's new for us. The last pandemic that impacted the world was in 1918 with the Spanish flu. So we don't want, the people who are living today don't really understand what it's like. And so we don't know what to do. We don't know what happens when this is happening. We have so much more information, and all of this is new territory. And then the true impact on our mental health, there's a lot of research and thoughts going on about how this is going to impact, how prolonged isolation impacts people, how time away from friends, how time away from touching people, that physical contact, how is that going to impact? We knew that from decades ago. There are studies about what happens to babies in orphanages when they're not picked up, and we know that they don't thrive, they don't grow, they don't do well. So what about when you're an older individual, when you're an adult, when you're a teenager, what happens to those individuals? So all those things are really still up in the air. We're not really sure how to deal with that. And it becomes a problem because we're still trying to understand how all this impacts us. So why I want to talk about this specifically with our mental health routines during uncertain times is because it all goes back to the brain. This is one of my favorite things to talk about, because we have to really understand that our brain is what's taking in, processing, and perceiving everything around us. And so we do know that all of these things that we're experiencing are going to have a huge impact on our relationships, our interactions, our anxiety, depression, communication skills, and reciprocal social communication. Like reciprocal, so being able to talk to someone, reading their face, their eyes, their tone, their body language. I mean, right now we're kind of restrained to shoulders and above. We don't see everybody's, nonverbals and everything else that's going on. And then if we're in front of them in person and we have a mask on, or we're distanced, we're not, it's really going to impact how the brain gets wired in terms of what's safe and what's not safe. And then not to mention the little ones, the 1 to 5 year olds who've never been in a school setting, or maybe they turned 3 and hadn't been in a daycare setting, and now they're operating in a very different environment. So all of these things are going to be impacting the brain, and the brain will have an even greater desire for safety, security, and stability. Our basic need is to be safe, secure, and stable. And a lot of what this pandemic has done is made us everything opposite of that. So that's why it's so important as adults, as teachers, as parents, that we provide that safety and security and stability for kids, not just physical with our masks or distancing or washing or, keeping environments safe and clean, but it's also about emotional stability, that when they're complaining about something, when they're, venting about something, when they're feeling unsure about their online schooling, when they're just done with the Zoom and they have Zoom fatigue, like to not just dismiss them, but to validate those feelings and to help them feel safe and secure to express that with you. So what can you do about this in your daily routines? Okay, so we know all this. It seems so doom and gloom. It seems horrible, like this is more bad news on top of bad news. But there's lots of ways that you can interrupt that so that it doesn't become all this like crisis mode and how it's horrible. One thing you can do is have a schedule. And I have been saying this from the very beginning. When 1 in 5 wanted me to do a series of videos back in March when this all started, one of the things that I said, and I was very adamant about this, and I know if several people were making jokes about this with memes and everything about schedules, is schedules do make a difference. We are, again, our brain thrives off of having boundaries and structure and routines, and our kids do too. Our kids need routines, they need boundaries, they need a sense of predictability. And schedules do that. Now, it doesn't mean you have to have a minute-by-minute schedule. We tried that. It didn't always work. There's times when our kids wanted more flexibility. There's times when they wanted more structure. So again, you have to determine what that's going to look like. Maybe it changes each day. Maybe it changes based on the age of your kid, on your household. There's so many factors. but having a general schedule. So for example, my kids are 8 and 10, so grades 3 and 5, and our general schedule, they wake up by, what time do they wake up? 7, wake up at 7 a.m. and they get dressed, have breakfast. They even have some downtime to play. They usually play Legos. We have a rule, no screen time before noon, but since now school is in session, no screen time until Thursday, okay? So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, absolutely no screen time, except on their online schooling, of course, but no entertaining screen time. So wake up 7, breakfast, blah, blah, blah. They start their schooling by 9 or 9:30. From 9:30 till about 1:30, they're doing schooling and taking little itty bitty breaks. Most of the times they prefer not to. They want to just work right through. My son in 3rd grade, he takes about 30 minutes or so for each subject. He goes through it. It's an accredited school. So we have things that are very specific in terms of what he's learning. There's 5 subjects. I have the schedule written down so he knows what to expect. And then they take a break for lunch. And then for the rest of the afternoon, they read, they play, they draw, they go outside. It's just free play. And so the the morning schedule is pretty, strict in terms of what they do. And then the afternoon is kind of open. And so literally from about 1:30, 2 o'clock until they go to bed at 9, it's free, open time. So and the kids deal well with that, but other kids that may be too much unstructured time. So then you may want to have something where you have like, okay, this is creative play time. This is reading time. This is outside time. This is, visit with your friends time, whatever it is that you want to just judge it based on how your kids do and how much time you have, what your schedule looks like. There's so many factors. The other thing is you want to be flexible. You want to adjust and adapt your kids' bedtime and meal schedule, especially if they're home with you and they're doing online schooling. Because if they have a lot more in-home, inside time, they're not building up enough sleep debt to be able to be tired at night. So a lot of parents are, when they approach me about, issues with their child's sleep schedule, they don't want to go to sleep. There's teenagers that I speak to who aren't going to sleep until like 3, 4, 5 in the morning, or especially during the summer and the spring, or kids who are pushing bedtime. Well, if you're not getting up, you're not going outside, you're not really in school or having football and gymnastics and running around doing errands, and you're driving around in traffic, those things tire you out throughout the day. You're building up your sleep debt. But if you're not doing any of those things or very few of those things, your body isn't getting exhausted. So it's really hard for kids to feel tired enough to go to sleep. So you have to kind of adjust it a little bit. So over the summer, my kids typically go to bed at 8:30 at night during the school time period. But during the summer, really, they were going to bed like 9:45, 10 o'clock. And so, doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Now they're going to bed probably about 9:15 or so, and then waking up at 8. So they're getting a good amount of sleep, and they're usually very rested when they wake up. Same thing with meals, is that a lot of times they're going to be grazing. They're going to eat constantly and nonstop. So you want to have those times in your schedule where there's meal times and snack times, but at the same time also be flexible with that. Provide good choices for them to have that. Another thing to help with your daily routine is to stay connected. So eye contact, smiling, holding their hand with your children, putting your hand on their shoulder, having a meal together, making a meal together, doing something special together, maybe going on a special errand together. Staying connected with our children and with our partners, with our families, is really important during this time. And whenever I've told people about this, I've had several people say, well, how do you stay connected? And it seems like, I was like, wow, I really took for granted what that means, but that's what it is. It's the eye contact, it's the hand holding, it's the doing things together, it's the smiling, it's sharing stories, it's talking, it's answering questions, asking them how they're feeling. Staying connected really serves as a protective factor in stressful times. Staying regulated is also really important. And not just for your child, but also for you. Again, it's this mirroring concept. So as we stay regulated, our kids do too. So it's really important to make sure that if you're going to have a well-balanced and flexible child, You have to be modeling that, and you have to be practicing that. If you want them to practice quiet time, you need to have quiet time. If you want them to practice doing things other than being on their phone mindlessly, you need to model that as well too. If you want them to be able to do other things besides always being on their screen, then make home fun. Don't say something like no screens or no phones at the dinner table, but then you're just sitting there with no conversation, or that you're asking them about something they don't want to talk about. Like, hey, did you clean your room? No one wants to talk about that at dinner time. So making it fun and making it interesting. I have a good friend who's a therapist who works with teens, and she says that, Janae, and she says that, many times parents want their kids to put away their headphones and put away their phones, but then they're not really that fun to talk to. It's boring. It's irritating to talk to parents, and kids find it irritating, and everybody finds everybody irritating. So make it fun and make it enjoyable, and regulate yourself and model the things that you want your kids to do too. What's also important is meeting your own parent needs. So if you need time and you need a break, finding ways to do that. So for us, how we do that is by having a village. So our kids are 8 and 10. So there's some things they can do on their own, but there's other things that we mentally don't have the capacity to help them with. So because I'm working full-time virtually, my husband is teaching full-time virtually. And so we have my niece who is a math tutor, and she's excellent at it. And so she Zooms in twice a week, and she works with the kids on things that she thinks are challenging for them, or that they express as challenging. Our former babysitter for the kids, she helps with everything else. Every day she checks their tests, their quizzes, their assignments, make sure they're on routine, on task rather. And then she checks in with them through direct messaging. We have an app that we use, and she direct messages them, sends them little notes, gives them tips, and then she does little tutoring sessions. So what that does for us is that it helps us not have to think about how to teach, how to reduce a fraction. Things that we don't have a desire, nor are we good at, we have other people doing it for us. And that way we can all work together to make this happen. So whether it's a babysitting village, whether it's you're exchanging meals with different parents, whether you're taking a break and you're tag teaming with a partner or spouse or a grandparent, those things are important to make sure your needs are being met, so that you could do the things that are fun, that are social, that are engaging, and that you're not being spent and poured out. Mirroring, again, is important. Being aware of how you and your child will reflect off of each other. And so being able to notice that. If you see that your child is irritable, if you're feeling irritable, notice that and say that, and then be gentle about that and saying, oh, it looks like you're feeling really tired today. Yesterday was a long day on online schooling, huh? Yeah, I get it. I'm feeling irritable today too. And letting them know it's okay. You have bad days, bad mornings, bad moments, so can they, and it's okay. And then also don't take their behaviors so personally. One of the things I find most often in parent coaching is that I find most parents take their children's behaviors personally. They get upset about them, and they think that they're offending them. They think they're trying to ruin their day. They think they're being just rude. And many times when a child is dysregulated, they're going to act that way. Many behaviors that kids do are developmentally appropriate, and it is situationally appropriate. It is normal for a 2-year-old to have a tantrum. It is normal for a 4-year-old to not want to share. It is normal for a 15-year-old to roll their eyes at you. Like, that is normal. It doesn't mean you say it's okay. It's saying not to get on them for every little thing they do that's actually appropriate given their age and stage. Okay, so then when should you seek help? If all these behaviors are so normal, Dr. Lockhart, like, when should we seek help? Okay, so when your behavior, reactions, and emotions to your child's behaviors become so intense and you feel out of control, you should probably seek help. If you feel like you're becoming this angry person and you can't regulate yourself and you feel like you're losing it, you should probably get help from a psychologist, a parent coach, a pastor, a good friend, seeking help. So in people that can help you, can give you a break that you could vent with. If you feel impaired in your functioning, if you feel like you're having significant depression and don't want to get out of bed, that you're feeling you're having panic attacks and your heart is having palpitations and you can't even leave your house, or you're feeling nervous and you're scanning the environment all the time when you go out, if you can't sleep at night, you're feeling addicted to your devices, any of those things, when you're feeling impaired, then you need to seek help, because that is not typical functioning. If your child's tantrums, behaviors, emotions, meltdowns, thoughts, words are beyond what is typical or normal for them. Okay, so I already said that having a tantrum as a toddler, not wanting to share as a young child, rolling your eyes as a teenager, all of those are normal. But if those things are new, and that's not what your kid normally does, they went from being this child who was always so willing to help, they were always so engaging and social, and now they're holed up in their room, and that's not normal, you may want to seek help. First, of course, connect. Always connect first. When it comes down to it, kids and teenagers want to connect with their parents first. Don't use a professional as a substitute for your connection. Any reaction is going to be expected. The time we're in is a highly, highly abnormal. So when you overreact, if you are yelling, if your child is backtalking and your home feels just kind of dysregulated, that's normal given this abnormal time. Any reaction is going to be expected. So I tell a lot of parents, stop being so hard on yourself and stop thinking that you are doing something so wrong. Because the thing is, however you respond is going to be expected. This is a strange time that we're in, and so we have to really give ourselves grace. If you feel things are disruptive and neither you or your child are functioning like you normally do, again, seek help. If you feel like you don't even want to ever be around your kids, if you feel like you are just not liking the way you look and you're judging yourself and you're always down on yourself and your self-esteem is plummeting and you feel self-conscious about your weight or the way you're dressing or the way you're interacting with people and any of those kinds of things, if it's disruptive and you're not functioning like you normally do, and you're becoming obsessed by certain things, you may want to seek help as well too. If you feel out of control and your home feels very unbalanced, you may need to see, it may not be mental health. It may be a professional organizer you may want to consult. Maybe it's someone who could redecorate your house. Maybe you could bring in someone to cut your grass, to clean your house, someone who can help with teaching your children, who can provide babysitting. I mean, any of those kinds of things. If you feel unbalanced, it's not just seeking mental health help, it's seeking help in general. If you just need someone to process things with, that's really important as well too. It's just sometimes we just need to vent and get that out, and getting an outside view or voice can be super helpful. So these are all things to keep in mind, and remember that it's not just the mental health situation. It might be seeking help from a nutritionist or a personal trainer. It could be so many different things. Is that we need to realize we can't do this alone and we need support, especially now. And then how can you help your child? Make sure you connect with them. Make sure that you limit screen time. That is not good for self-regulation. That is why we don't have our kids watching TV Monday through Wednesday, and then Thursdays and Fridays, they have it after they finish their schoolwork, after noon. And so that screen time, if it's too much, most kids are going to be significantly dysregulated when they spend too much time on their screens. It's a fact. Kids with mental health issues, like especially ADHD, and behavioral concerns, as well as depression and anxiety, they are more likely to be dysregulated anyway. Their emotions, their thoughts, their behaviors are already dysregulated. And when you plop them in front of a screen, which there's rabbit holes of search engines and apps and TikTok dances and all these different kinds of things, they are going to lose themselves in it. And when it's time to shut it down, you're going to get an explosion. So that limiting it is extremely important. There's a lot of professionals out there who are going to tell you that, well, technology is part of who we are in our everyday life. Yes, that is true, but it doesn't mean you need to have unlimited time on the screen nonstop. It's not healthy for their eyes, it's not healthy for their brains, and it's definitely not healthy for their self-regulation. It's also important to keep a balanced sleep routine. Sleep is restorative, which means we feel better when we sleep. Sleep helps our brain, Sleep helps our mood. It helps with our weight, helps with our appetite. It helps with our thinking. It helps us retain information better. Sleep is super important. So keeping a balanced sleep routine is really, really important. You do that through good exercise, getting physically active every day. Kids should get 60 minutes of exercise and physical activity every single day. That helps to build their sleep debt. It helps with their memory and focus and concentration. It helps them with their mood. Okay. Also, do special things together. Your kids are going to be less likely to remember the horror of what's going on right now when they see how their parents responded. That is amazing what a protective factor that is. And when they talk about a lot of research in terms of keeping kids from harm, helping them in terms of suicidality, help them protect them from depression, protective factors is a huge thing that's often talked about. And protective factors include things like having a supportive other person, having a community of people, having peer support, your faith, exercise, sleep, being able to be resourceful, asking for help, being receptive to help, and a parent who is regulated and responsive and safe. Those are things that insulate people from further harm. And so that's really, really important to make sure that you do special things together. With your little ones, it could be 15 minutes of a game, a preferred game, their preferred, child preferred game, where you play Play-Doh or make something, or make homemade, slime, or draw together, jump on the trampoline together, like doing something together. With your older kids and teenagers, it could be playing Uno together, playing a board game together, drawing together, speaking about something, learning a TikTok dance with your teenager. Like any of those things are ways that you could do something special. And it doesn't have to be a ton of time. It needs to be quality time when it's child focused, face to face. And then create new routines and moments together, doing things together that you both can have as a thing that you have, like whether it's creating a scrapbook, learning a new hobby, taking a class together, but doing something where you do a new routine, and that's something that's special for the two of you. Always use empathy when responding to your child, because this is important. That's how you build their feeling vocabulary. That is another way that you insulate your child. That's how you protect them, is that you tell them that I am a safe person for you to have a tantrum with. I'm a safe person for you to vent with. That using those feeling words, it seems like you are feeling overwhelmed by what's going on right now. And those are why the empathy is important, is because that when you're giving them those words, this is something that could be helpful for them, and it gives them that sense that this person, my parent, my grandparent, is a safe person. So these are some helpful scripts that I want to give. These are often highly requested, often with people when I work with them, is what to say in certain times. And so you can, screenshot this or take a picture of it. If your child is expressing feelings of fear, you can say something like, "Of course you're scared. I'm scared too sometimes. I'm here to keep you safe." People want to feel a sense of me too and a sense of validation. And when you reflect back what you're hearing, you don't have to go into massive detail about why you're scared. You can just say, "Yeah, I get it." Okay. But then giving that sense of safety. "Well, it's unfair. It's unfair we can't go to school. It's unfair we have to wear masks. It's unfair we have to stay home," whatever it is. I know it feels unfair. That's hard to feel that way. So we're really trying to emphasize the fact that it's not good or bad that you're feeling this, but you feel it, and I hear you, and I'm validating. We're not trying to rescue them. We're not trying to fix it. We're just acknowledging, we're noticing and reflecting it back and saying, "Hey, I'm a safe person for you to say this to and to vent with." How about if they express discomfort? "Well, I don't feel comfortable going to school. I don't feel comfortable with that person wanting to hug me. I don't feel comfortable," whatever it is. Lots of people feel uncomfortable. It's okay to feel uncomfortable when things are so uncertain. How about if they're saying something about COVID? They're going on a rant about it. A lot of teenagers are talking to their parents about, what's this, and this is this, and this is this. So COVID has been incredibly inconvenient for our family, our city, our world. You have been such a trooper, and you should be so proud of yourself for pushing through even when it felt miserable. So you want to give them a sense of assurance that I see, I notice, And you should be proud of yourself for making it through this, because this is a hard time. So I want to share a little story to kind of bring this all home. Is I went through a major hurricane my senior year of high school. It was 3 weeks in. And at that point, I was a pretty bad student all throughout junior high and high school. And my grades were terrible. 3 weeks into my senior year, I grew up on an island in the Caribbean, and we got hit by a Category 5. And we knew it was coming. This was in 1989. And so we knew it was coming, but we didn't have a lot of information on what a Category 5 actually meant. This is pre-internet. This is when we were going into card catalogs and microfiche encyclopedias trying to figure out what is a Category 5, what is the devastating impact. And up until that point, we had been hit by hurricanes, but they were always very mild. So got hit, got some rain, schools canceled for a couple days, yippee, like it wasn't a big inconvenience. Category 5 was very different. So anyway, we went through this. It was horrible. The hurricane hit my island. It was just me and my mom at the time. My brother and sister were in the States for college. And it was me, my mom, and my little poodle. And the hurricane hit our home. We were sleeping, and it ripped apart our house, like literally ripped apart the house. We woke up to the sound of crashing glass. So it came in, the wind swooped in, it ripped off the roof. And the time it ripped off the roof, all the walls went. So the room that we were in was stable, but the wall or the ceiling above it kept lifting slightly with every gust of wind. So it went on for 12 hours. It was horrible. And it was a wind hurricane, which meant that we didn't have a lot of rain at the time. And so because it was so much wind, it was 300 mile per hour sustained winds for 12 hours in the area that we were in. And so the next morning, the island looked burnt. All the trees were burnt. You could see through the island. It was the weirdest thing. It looked like it was just a fire from all the wind burn. So anyway, it destroyed everything. And we had looting, we had martial law. It was horrible. The crime had gone out of control. People were just, ripping apart stores and everything. And I told my mom, we need to leave this island. Like, this is not good for my mental health. Like, there is no way we can stay here. And my mom told me, and I don't remember the exact words, but I remember the gist of the message was, we don't run away when things get hard, and we persist. And I thought that was ridiculous, because I was like, why in the world would a 17-year-old want to persist in the midst of this crap situation? And, but we didn't leave. And it was impactful for me to stay, because I ended up doing volunteer work with the Red Cross, and I did damage assessments of different homes and buildings. I did that for several weeks until the school opened. Went back to school, and I was so determined to finish and finish well. I studied my tail off, and I got straight A's when I graduated from high school. I got so many honors, so many awards. I wrote an amazing college essay. They felt so sorry for me. They admitted me to several schools, and I was able to get a chance to do well, even though my GPA was really terrible. But what I learned out of that, and this was horrible. I mean, was no electricity for 9 months. We were under martial law for 9 months. There was massive looting. We couldn't go out from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. My eyesight is when it got bad, because we had no electricity for several months. We had to do homework by candlelight and kerosene light. I got dengue fever, got bit by infected mosquitoes, and got dengue fever. Like, it was terrible. It was horrible. But it was one of the best, most impactful times of my life, because I learned to persist in hard things, and I learned to thrive even when things got hard. And the reason why I got that message is because the people around me, my mom, my aunts, that's the message that they shared. We spent, because we had no electricity, we couldn't listen to TV, couldn't watch the TV. We spent time playing games, sharing family stories, and just being present with one another. Even in the midst of eating military food and Red Cross food out of cans, we were a family. We connected, we joined, and I learned that we can make it through hard things. And so even in the midst of this pandemic, when this pandemic first started, I actually didn't, even though it was surreal for me, I actually thrived in the midst of it, because I learned to thrive when things are hard, because that's the message I got 30 years ago. And so when that's the message that we give our kids, that was one of the biggest gifts my mom gave me, is to teach me that I don't have to pretend like things are good, because things weren't good. It's that I could persist even when they're hard. And that's what I want to give to you, is that this time sucks. There's no doubt about it. It is unfair. We want it to end, and it shouldn't be this way. We get it. But the fact of the matter is that this is how it is right now, and we will make it through it. It's going to eventually end, and we will make it through it stronger. And we will have a whole new set of skills that we didn't have before. So what we do matters. And our kids look to us for encouragement, for strength, and as a model to get through tough times like this. They look to us to figure out how to handle tough situations. So we need to give that to them. We need to be their strong foundation, and we need to give that, communicate to them that I'm here for you, even when I don't feel great, even when I'm scared too, I'm still here for you. So if you need to vent, I'm here to listen. And that's what the message we want to give to our kids. All right, so this is my contact information. If you want to reach out, you need further help and further support, parent coaching, and just some guidance, I'm also here for that support as well too. So you can find me on Instagram and Facebook, and then also visit my website. All right, Nancy.
All right, do we have any questions for Dr. Lockhart? For those of you that are online. I have one question that came in.
Okay.
You're obviously, you're working with a lot of people now, you're coaching a lot of people, you've given us great advice about things to do, but let's talk more real life. What are you actually seeing, especially maybe in the younger kids, and then maybe in the early teens? I know that some of the older teens, I don't know, in our work, we feel like a lot of times the older teens are in a better place, and it would be interesting to hear your perspective on that as well.
Yeah, I think that it depends, it varies. So in the beginning, a lot of the clients that I knew who were dealing with anxiety, they got better in the beginning. And it was kind of like a, I told you so feeling for them. Like, see, I told you there's things to be worried about, guys. Like there is things to be anxious about. And so it was kind of like a sense of when the rest of the world was losing their minds, a lot of anxious individuals kind of felt like, ah. But then as it continued too long, a lot of it just skyrocketed. And so what I'm seeing across the board in little ones all the way up through adults is a lot of anxiety, like a significant amount of anxiety. I'm not seeing a ton of health anxiety, which I'm a little surprised by, but just a lot of like obsessions type thing of like, where it's hard to determine if it's obsessive or not. Like we're supposed to wash our hands, we're supposed to disinfect, we're supposed to cover our mouth. So then how do you know when it's obsessive, you know? So people questioning whether or not their OCD has returned, or whether this is obsessive compulsive behavior, or it's just good hygiene. So it's a lot of people are second guessing themselves, right? You know? And so that's what I'm seeing more. But the other thing that I'm seeing a lot is a lot of dysregulation, a lot of tantrums, a lot of kids who are doing things beyond what is normal, screaming at their parents, slamming doors, not wanting to be around, back talking, obsessions with their screens, a lot of screen addictions going on right now. And that's a lot of what and tired parents. They're exhausted.
Exactly.
Exhausted. It's a lot to manage. Even when I think about all the things that I do, it's like, well, of course you're exhausted. Look at all this stuff we're doing.
Exactly. And it does, with the fact that there's no end in sight.
No end in sight.
And the winter is coming.
Right. With colds and strep.
Right.
And allergies. Allergy season is terrible right now in Texas. So people are like, I'm okay, I just have allergies. Like it's like so much. So yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard because in Texas, are most of the kids out of school? Are they mostly doing remote?
It's a mix. So a lot of the public schools are virtual and remote until like October ish time frame, and then a lot of the private and parochial schools are back.
Okay.
So it's a mix.
And that's really hard because it's, you know, everybody's doing something a little bit different, and people are the kids that are in school, if they have anxiety, it really is escalating their anxiety because they're like, you're sick, stay away from me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or people that know a lot of the kids who are home, they're like, well, why are we home when so-and-so is at school?
Right.
Why can they go out and hang out with their friends and I'm stuck here? And so it's such a huge disparity in terms of how people are living and how people are operating. And so it's hard to explain, especially to the older ones, because that's where their sense of self is with peers. And so when they can't do that,
it's really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, the one thing that we talk about it, and you talked about it too, is it's figuring out what routines you need to do. What is your self-care? What does that schedule look like? Just really trying to figure out what is going to work for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And really, and winging it and setting it, seeing it doesn't work, and then tweaking it and making adjustments. Just like we've been doing with our kids, that there's some days when the schedule works and other days where it doesn't. And it's okay. If they're having a rough time and it takes them extra long, I'll say it's okay that you don't finish it all today.
Right.
And there's other days when they work ahead. So like my son yesterday, he worked ahead and he's finished his schoolwork up until Friday. So I'm like, well, let's keep working ahead because there's going to be some days when you can't.
Right.
So it's okay.
Exactly. It's okay. Yeah. I don't know if anybody else has any questions. Doesn't appear to be. Well, I want to thank you for being with us tonight. The 1 in 5 in Mindpiece are putting together this State of Mind speaker series. It is being sponsored by the Hamilton County Mental Health and Recovery Board. And I encourage you to go online and to look at the other videos that are available and to educate yourself. And we'll continue to have Facebook events in the future and continue to come on and educate yourself and figure out the best thing that's going to help you move through this period. So Dr. Lockhart, thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
This was great education, and I think we'll continue. It'll be posted out on Facebook, and I'm sure lots of people will benefit from it.
I appreciate the invitation. Thanks, Nancy.
All right.
All right.
Take care.
Bye, guys.
All right.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
A special thank you to our State of Mind speakers and to you for joining us. More videos and educational resources can be found at 1 in 5's website. If you feel like you or your child is in need of professional support, therapists are available. Please refer to Mindpiece's school-based or community resource page. For a mental health crisis or emergencies, patients and families are encouraged to contact their current mental health provider first. This allows the mental health provider who knows your child best to provide support and direction. If your child does not have a mental health provider and they are experiencing a non-life-threatening mental health crisis, you are encouraged to contact the Psychiatric Intake Response Center at Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center. 513-636-4124. Call 911 or go to the emergency department if you are experiencing a medical emergency, a life-threatening mental health crisis, or are directed to go there by a medical provider. This will help limit the spread of COVID-19 in our community and allow our emergency departments to care for patients with the most critical needs first.